Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
It is I, the one, the only. Since we started late, is it cool if we go ahead and just jump right into the episode, yes?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2, joining me today is...
The Comics Kid 2099. Hello.
And a geek for fun. Howdy.
Howdy indeed. So tonight we are continuing my impromptu takeover of everyone else's picks for a while with Batman War Games Act 1, Outbreak. We're reviewing the entire War Games saga. So, like I said last week, I'm not entirely sure how much we'll have to say on this, given that, like, thoughts kind of accumulate as you go through the series. So we'll talk a little bit about what's coming and what's going on and what's come before. But if this isn't a full hour and a half episode or hour and some change episode, sorry. So we'll start in a pretty basic place. We did our War Drums review last week. I'll just go round robin. Is this an improvement or a drop down for you, based on your feelings on War Drums? Was Act 1 better or worse? And we'll start off with Ruben, since I feel he was the most negative on War Drums.
I actually think this is a drop down.
Wow.
I think maybe looking back, I was just maybe a little unfair towards War Drums, and I think part of that was me remembering War Games. I think by itself, War Drums, there's some things about it that I think work better than I was giving it credit for. So I think this is a drop down for me.
Oh, okay. How about you, Alfie?
It's been kind of the opposite for me. I thought this was a much more exciting read.
Okay.
So I just been a drop up for me.
Drop up?
Or-
You know, when you drop something up,
I know gravity, I'm good.
Yeah. See, for me, this is definitely a step up in quality. I like it as it goes. It just starts... Again, we don't really do stuff like this anymore, or at least we haven't in the last couple of years, and I kind of miss it in certain ways. Like, this, yeah, it's gritty and real, and that's part of the problem with comics, but I do miss some of that stuff. So, like, not to skip to the end of it, but I really do like when we get toward the end of it here, and we got all this stuff with the school. That's, like, legit scary. The way the first issue of this school stuff ends is just damn scary to me. I don't really have anything else besides that of Tim Drake's little internal monologue. My name is Tim Drake, and I have one job to do in this world. My only job is to breathe twice into Darla Aquista's mouth for every 15 times I compress her chest, back and forth over and over, 15 chest compressions followed by 2 breaths, followed by another 15 chest compressions, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and breathe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Never stopping, no matter how tired I get, because you don't give up until relieved by qualified medical help. That's the rule, and I know that qualified medical help isn't coming. Not anytime soon. Maybe not at all. And I'm just like, it's really fucking dark. It maybe hits a little too close to home with the number of school shootings that have happened in the last couple of years. They've definitely gone up since this comic was released, but I don't know, man. Some of the drama there, the intensity of the emotion actually really gets to me. and it gets me very invested. And what's more is that doesn't feel cheap. The whole issue builds to that. The whole series builds to this confrontation at the school, or the whole series thus far builds this confrontation at the school. Like, this is part of this escalation of war, and I don't know, man. Like, just the tone of that stuff really starts to work for me. But I guess we'll harp on Ruben, since he's going to be the naysayer, the sayer of nay. So what about it didn't work for you here, so specifically in Act 1?
Each issue feels it's all just the same to me, and I think I'm gonna feel like a broken record as we get into Act 2 and Act 3. But each issue is, okay, let's go punch these gangsters. They're taking over Otisburg, and these gangsters over here, they're taking over the hill, and we got to go punch them. And it's a whole lot of. And now when it gets to the school, I agree. It feels very fresh compared to like the 6 issues that precedes it. But the first chunk of this trade, it all just feels like the same plot being rinsed through each issue, and then I feel like we get a whole lot more of that as we go on. Now, I could be misremembering, and I may have a different tune that I'll be singing next week, but the first chunk of this book I feel like could have been condensed down into like 3 issues. And then when we get to the school, you're right, the stakes feel higher here than any time Joker threatens to blow up Gotham with a nuclear bomb or anything like that. It feels so much more like you said, I feel more invested here. And that's partly because it's a character we know is in this very dangerous situation, no weapons or anything. But also it's just like, even when Batman and Batgirl and Nightwing are in the school taking out the gangsters, like, it feels more dangerous here than it does when they're on a rooftop, fighting bad guys or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I can appreciate that. And I think you are right. Like, when I'm thinking about this, I am definitely thinking about what happens as you get into the second volume. Not all the stuff going, or the second half of the volume, not all the stuff going on beforehand. Like, as the war breaks out, and it's mainly just affecting the different gangs and the Bat family directly, it's not as big a deal. Like, the Nightwing and Tarantula stuff isn't as interesting to me. It's got its moments that are kind of cool. Like, I like that Tarantula is kind of a gang leader who's trying to do the exact same thing Batman's trying to do with Orpheus. I think that's kind of a cool idea. To parallel them in that way. And we, of course, start to set up stuff with Black Mask, who will eventually, benefit from all of this. And we've got Penguin and like, that stuff seems like it's all set up for where the emotional climax of the volume is with the stuff at the school. Because all the stuff going on with Penguin and Tarantula and all that stuff is just setting up how desperate the different crime families and gangs are getting, and it sets up this state of total war that engulfs Gotham and begins to affect the citizenry. And that's right there at the beginning of the Robin issue of the Alamo High part of the story. Darla's in there and she's talking to her mob bodyguards and is like, okay, how much danger am I actually in? And they're like, listen, there have been wars before. No one goes after anyone's family. That's off limits. And, you get to the end of that first issue, and then you look over at the next chapter, and there's mafia men going to execute a fucking preschooler. And it feels like, holy shit, everything that's been happening up to this point is kind of like, I could definitely see it. It does feel like everything that happens before the school stuff is just, okay, gang members are shooting at each other and everything. But then the second half of this volume is really where it starts to ground itself and does start to feel really intense, and it makes the stuff previous to it shine a bit better for me.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like like overall idea of like the repetition. I kind of like it because I feel like repetition can be a strong narrative tool. And when you want to establish like this is happening everywhere all at once and there's so much of it, it's like overwhelming. That's like a really important thing, is you do kind of have to show all these members of the Bat family and all their individual books are dealing with the same problem, because that's how widespread it is, and that's how like we can't contain this, because yes, it's the same thing that they can handle, it's just the sheer quantity of it. So I actually kind of appreciate that as like an idea, but I do agree, like once you're reading it, the fight scenes all kind of start to mount together. But that's just part of like when you do a crossover this large over so many different books, every writer kind of has to then in their individual issue for their individual readers have to like say it up and then show it. So you can't really get over it to just deal with the scale.
I think that might be fair.
Yeah, I agree, because reading this when it came out was probably a very different experience, because you'll have, you know, Detective Comics comes out this week, and then Nightwing comes out next week, and then Batgirl comes out the week after. And so you're, you know, best case scenario, you're reading one chapter a week, so it's not going to feel as repetitive and monotonous then. And then, you know, someone who's reading Bill Willingham's Robin, it's not necessarily a given that they're also reading Batgirl and Nightwing and Detective Comics. So, like you were kind of hinting at, Alfie, like he has to remind everyone just reading his series, this is what's going on. So that's a fair point. You know, crossovers like this in 2003, I don't think they were meant to be consumed in the span of a day, like what I did. So that's definitely partly on me reading it like I did, where I'm reading it in a way that I don't think it was meant to be read when it was written.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. I kind of looked at some of the comments that got posted on the War Drums, or in reaction to War Drums on Twitter. And a lot of people seem to mention the same thing, that they've forgotten a lot of this story arc of this crossover. And, you know, you mentioned that you read it all in one day. Was it today, Ruben?
Well, in the span, I read like 2 or 3 issues yesterday, and then the rest of it today.
Okay. Because I started reading Volume 1, or Act 1, rather, on Sunday, and then I finished, the last 2 chapters today, and I read a little bit here, a little bit there. And, you know, just sitting here thinking about it, if I wasn't able to flip through it and look at, like, oh yeah, Orpheus got into the whole thing where he's trying to peacefully take over another gang, and then, like, that was an ambush and all this, like, I'd remember the first chapter, and I definitely remember all the stuff at the school. A lot of the stuff in the middle, yeah, it does kind of, it kind of fades on me. But at the same time, when I just look at it and I experience it in the context, in the moment, it works really well for me. The Penguin selling off superpowered bodyguards at auction, man, that takes me right back to No Man's Land, where he's like got a bidding war over a fucking apple. You know, just like that kind of shit. I miss that Penguin so much. Like, you know, the things in context in and of themselves really work for me. But long term, yeah, a lot of it doesn't stick, which is surprising. Like, there's the whole meeting with Hush and the mysterious stranger who seems to be orchestrating all this. Spoiler alert, it's Black Mask. That, no fucking memory of that whatsoever. Like, I barely remember it now. Who's with him? Is that...
Prometheus?
It is Prometheus. Okay, so that must be why I confuse more Orpheus and Prometheus for, you know, multiple reasons then. Okay.
Have you read Hush Returns?
Is that the one where, like, he's going after Riddler, right?
Yeah, they're referencing that here, and it's one of my top 5 worst Batman stories I've ever read. And A.J. Lieberman is the guy who wrote it. He has like 4 credits to his name if you look him up on Amazon, but he's one of the writers on this book, and I'm pretty sure he's writing that issue that has Hush. And as soon as I saw that Hush and Prometheus were there, I could not have rolled my eyes any harder.
I'm with ya. Hush is like synonymous for like bad Batman stories for me.
Now, I like Prometheus. You know, we're all Grant Morrison fans here, and I think that his arc in that JLA run in the 90s, I think that is an awesome introduction story for a villain. Unfortunately, like most Grant Morrison characters, he gets the shaft afterwards. Nobody cares about writing Grant Morrison characters. And here he is, like, he's hired muscle for a crappy Batman villain that none of us like. And in Hush Returns, he gets beaten by Green Arrow. And I'm not, you know what, I'm going to get off on a tangent. So,
I'm just flipping through pages here, and I was going to make a point about Hush, but I just want to make a side point. Brad Walker is the penciler for the issue, for the chapter Behind Enemy Lines, and somehow he doesn't know how to draw Cassandra Cain's Batgirl mask when it's by far the best Batgirl mask. I don't know how you fuck that part up, but whatever. It looks really bad. It looks like it's latex or something. It's clearly never meant to be. It's always been cloth. It's a bad one. I don't know how you fuck up a perfect design, but he did it. Anyway, so the Prometheus stuff, yeah, it's just awkward and weird, and it does seem like it's trying to still tie into Hush's popularity, because Hush is 2003, this is 2004, Hush Returns is it running concurrently with this, or is it like just after this? It must have been just before.
I think it was a little before, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that one's really bad. That's the one, like, super hard confirms that the Joker's origin and the Killing Joke is, like, 100% factual. And
yes.
It's super weird and like completely misses the point of the story, but it's got just a great page at the end.
And tries to say that Riddler was like just hanging out there when Joker met with those mobsters in the flashbacks and Killing Joke, that Riddler was just like hanging out watching the whole thing happen.
Yeah, like do.
It's fun.
Yeah. No, I agree. That not good. The opposite of good. Also, like, they try so hard to not show you Black Mask's face that we get this really awkward panel of Hush's abs. I just want to point that out. It's kind of weird.
By the way, why is he wearing bandages here? Because, like, there's one really good shot where, like, you see his face, and his face is not scarred up here. At least the artist is not drawing his face to be messed up, but he's still wearing the bandages. And, like, I know at one point Tommy Elliott went through surgery to look like Bruce Wayne, but I think that was like way after. That was well
after. Yeah, that's like 2006 or 7 maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
It's just because that's what he does?
Yeah, it's just his look.
Okay.
Can you imagine how much that shit would hurt to pull off every day? Like, it just, god damn. Anyway, and then he fucking just like one arms Deadshot. That's dumb.
Yeah, I call nonsense on that.
Same here. It was just like he just launched him across the floor like he was nothing, and then like Deadshot's kind of getting his ass kicked throughout this entire thing.
Okay, here's my fan theory. All right. Deadshot doesn't seem like the type to work as Penguin's bodyguard. I think Penguin just bought a Deadshot costume and like had some random fucking dude put it on, and like he was just really banking on Deadshot's image.
That makes the scene where Onyx is talking to Deadshot, and then Orpheus is talking to Penguin, I think. And she's like, "Hey, Floyd, how you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm good. How are you?" That makes that so much better, because now I'm just imagining just some dude like, "Oh, I hope she doesn't know that I'm not Floyd."
Oh man, yeah, like I will agree with you, Ruben. A lot of the middle stuff here just is not very good. I like a lot of the subterfuge. This was like during the era, and it never made any goddamn sense, but it was always cool. This during the era where Batman's an urban legend and people don't believe he exists. And I'm like, yeah, no, I agree. It never made any goddamn sense, but I always liked it. And I will die on this hill, Alfie.
All right, because like I think it can make sense because it's comic book Batman, and like if he can take out the Justice League, I could buy that he can hide from the media. My thing is, how is it how is it less scary to have the possibility of this like Batman out there than it being a definite fact that this 6 foot tall mounting of muscle will jump out at you if you try to rob someone? Like, that is infinitely more like, oh, I won't do crime if I know for a fact he exists. Like, I don't understand it. It's like, oh no, you could go out and get like possessed by a ghost if you go to this haunted house. But then if someone comes up to me and says, I have footage of an actual ghost here, that's more scary.
I mean,
I guess
you're not wrong.
It goes back to something, a guy that I had a class with in college, he said that, I want to say he attributed this to Stephen King, but I don't remember. But they were saying, like, if you hint at something, if you say, like, you know, there's a monster, but you don't show the monster, you don't see how tall it is, then in your mind, it's like, oh, man, that's like a really scary 25-foot tall monster. But then if you see the monster, it's like, oh, well, thank goodness it's not a 26-foot tall monster. And so, like, Batman, I guess, I'm not a vigilante, so I don't know, but I guess he's like, well,
damn it, Ruben. I
know,
fucking knew it.
I have a T-shirt that says, like, no one has seen me and Batman in the same room together. That T-shirt's a lie, you know. But anyway, so people, I guess he's thinking, like, as long as they don't see it, then in their mind they can imagine whatever. It's kind of like that episode of Batman the animated series where it's like one kid is imagining a Frank Miller Batman and one kid is imagining the Dick Spring 1950s Batman. And so, like,
wait, hold on. If you're gonna bring up that episode, you're not gonna get away with it without me mentioning the fact that, like, they threw major shade at Joel Schumacher in that episode.
They did.
For like no reason. It's just mean.
It is. Yeah.
Okay, anyway, go on.
Well, just, you know, I guess he's thinking, like, as long as people don't see me, because once they see the footage and then it goes viral and it goes on YouTube, then people will say, hey, it's just a human dude wearing a rubber costume. And, like, that's still scary because it's like, this is the dude who's protected our city for 15 years or however long. But it loses some of that mystique because some of those people might have thought, well, maybe he's a vampire, like, or maybe he's, you know, I don't know, a shadow monster that, you know, sucks on fear or something like that, you know. So I guess that's what Batman is banking on. I agree with you, though, like a quantifiable, like, guarantee that he's gonna jump you if you try crime should carry some weight.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay, so, like, the thing for me, it's multi-pronged with Batman as the urban legend. So first of all, let's talk about why it's really dumb. Okay, so Tim Drake is in this story. Tim Drake's origin as Robin is that he saw news footage of Batman and Robin and deduced that they were Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson based on the news footage. So
that is a really good point. I never thought about that.
Yeah, so any story where Batman is an urban legend post Tim Drake makes no fucking sense, and I'll totally agree with it. Here's why I don't care. Because the idea that, like, he's not the Superman type, he's not the Green Lantern type where, like, shows up with the superpowers and saves the day and it's like this big spectacle. Like, the idea, and it's played with it, I'm pretty sure it's in War Drums that they mentioned it, but the idea that Batman's just this, you know, lurking, shadowy figure, and, like, all the cops and everyone, like, take credit for all the good he's doing, but, like, all the criminals that he's putting away and everything just keep telling rumors and stories about him, and he keeps getting, like, scarier and bigger and freakier, and then, like, the news media kind of sort of believes in him, but, like, even amongst themselves they disagree about it. I really fucking dig it. It's got this cool, like, atmosphere to it. It's got this cool mood to it that Batman doesn't give a fuck about the credit. He just cares about the results. I like that side of it. I like what that does for the character. And I also like that what it does for the universe and, like, how we can have these other, you know, criminals and stuff, like, making up stories and stuff about him. I just think that shit's really, really cool, and it creates a very particular mood that I can't help but enjoy. Dumb or not, I can't help but like it.
No, I get ya, and if you make some strong points with like the whole atmosphere thing, but see, I don't think you need to get rid of that to still have him be an existing thing because, again, no matter what, Batman's never going to be the Superman figure or the Green Lantern figure because, yes, you may get like news footage of him that people say, oh, he's existed, and, like the victims he saves will say, oh, Batman saved me, so that's just showing that yes, he exists. But he still doesn't need to like do interviews with the press or anything. He can still operate as Batman, where he just like he's still in all the shadows all the time. It's hard to get photos of him. But stories like this, where they say it's physically impossible, the sheer chance that no one's ever saw a glimpse of him, and he's like actively risking people's lives by the efforts he's going to conceal his identity at some points. That I just feel like is something Batman wouldn't do, especially when like the whole premise of Batman. He has to make people believe he's out there for his idea to work with. Otherwise, if he's so much of a myth, then criminals will go on the streets anyway because he's hardened gangsters. They'll be superstitious, cowardly lot, but only to a certain extent if they think he's a total myth.
I think that's fair. I do think that's fair, and it gets murky as shit. My line for it, where I fear we cross it too often, is when you take away the potential for him to be an urban legend, is when you start to get stuff like, I like Young Justice well enough now that I've seen the whole series, but like, God, episode 1 where Batman and Robin and all the other superheroes are just walking into the Hall of Justice, it bugs the crap out of me. Like, the second Batman's there in the press junket with all the other superheroes, it irks me to no end. And it's not like it's just in Young Justice or something. Like, it even happens by the time you get toward the end of Justice League, where he's just front and center with the other cameras and stuff. And it starts to just, I don't like it. It feels weird when you see him out in public, in fucking photo ops and getting medals from the president and shit. Like, I hate that. It doesn't work for him. It just doesn't.
I'm with you now.
Like, so the second you take away the urban legend thing is the second you start to get that stuff. And I hate it. Hate it so much.
Something else I never really thought about is like, in any story where it's like Batman is an urban legend, how do they explain the bat light or the bat signal? Because like in The Dark Knight, one of the dumbest lines in that movie is a malfunction on police property. I was like, how is it a malfunction? It's very clearly a symbol that is supposed to look like a bat, and you're saying like, oh, it's a malfunctioning piece of property. So like that's another thing. Like, we know the bat signal exists at this point. Now, Commissioner Atkins, I think is his name, he's probably not using the signal, but we know it exists anyway. And so like that's another thing that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if he's an urban legend, why do we have this bat symbol that's showing up in the sky every night?
There've actually been things, not in this story, but I've seen stuff to use that justification. Like the people, there's been scenes with like crooks sitting around talking to each other, and they're like, oh man, Batman's not a myth. Batman doesn't exist. He's just a myth. And they're like, but what about the bat signal? Oh, that's just the cops turning that on to freak you out. It gets really elaborate and really silly, but at the same time it plays in with that superstitious cowardly lot thing, that like they've got to invent reasons for why these things happen, and I kind of dig those. Again, absolutely, at no point in DC Comics continuity has it ever made any goddamn sense for Batman to actually be an urban legend. Like, every origin I've ever seen with Batman, it's very clear to everybody in Gotham with, eyeballs that he exists. Everything has Batman very evidently existing. I don't care. I actually really like the feel of the urban legend thing.
Yeah.
Okay. What else can we talk about with games?
Let's talk about the reporter guy who at the beginning of this book is like, I want to give Batman a blowjob, and then at the end of the book he's like,
oh, what issue did you read?
yeah, he's like, look at him, Batman murdered a teenage girl, zoom in on the, and it's like, come on, like, I don't know enough about news journalism, but I'm pretty sure that's against the rules. Like, I know Batman's not gonna like sue the guy or anything, but he doesn't know the girl's dead. Like, she's still alive at the end of Act 1, but he's over here, and like, it just seemed really weird to me how fast he jumps from like being the biggest supporter of Batman to like, oh, this girl's dead because of him. Like, these superheroes should be outlawed. And I was just like, come on, this is a little weird.
See, I don't know, like, I think close in, Bobby, get a camera on him, just him, the masked fiend, and the girl he killed. Who says he killed her, Winona? Okay, so, like, what you're talking about there, that's not necessarily the same reporter. Like, that reporter does have a stand-up. Many facts remain unclear at this time, but one fact seems simply indisputable. The unauthorized intervention of costume vigilantes into this crisis seems to have caused the death of at least one young girl. So the context for that stand-up is that they had just heard gunshots, everyone came running out, and Batman was carrying a dead girl. Fair
enough.
From the look of the context of that scene, I think the interpretation is meant to be that everyone in the media thinks Batman just got that girl killed because he was doing his vigilante bullshit. They don't have the context that she was shot well beforehand that we, the readers, do. And as far as, like, the masked fiend who got this girl killed, that's, I believe, supposed to be other reporters. That's not necessarily directly attributed to the one guy we've been following. So I do see where you're coming from, because I kind of interpreted that as a bit of a heel turn too, but then I reread it, and I think the wider context is supposed to be that's other reporters, because there are other reporters on the scene.
Gotcha. I thought it was just the same guy. Oh, go ahead, Alfie.
I've kind of got a counter argument to like support Ruben here a bit, because I feel like, okay, so we have that. I get what you're saying with, like, from their perspective, it looks like Batman just like botched this whole operation. I'd buy that if this was like Metropolis. In Gotham City, when is a hostage situation ever gonna go that successfully? I'm sure every reporter is like, oh, thank God they're not all dead. Like, it doesn't really, especially with everything happening, yes, it's still a tragedy, but the fact that we thought that this was going to happen for hours and be a very likely chance that all these gangsters are, without any direction, they're going to lose their temper at some point and they're going to start firing, and we're going to have to go in and shoot anything that moves, basically. I'm pretty sure in Gotham specifically, they'd be very relieved that, oh my God, they got out safe. All the armed gunmen are taken out and ready to be captured in the wake of this, where like people are putting hits on like preschoolers. This seems like a very, very successful operation for this giant catastrophe that's currently happening in the city. I don't really buy that this is suddenly Batman's fault.
Okay. All right, I don't have a counter argument to that. It does feel very convenient, I guess. Yeah, I don't really have much of a counter argument. I do like the idea that this is like the first time that he's ever been caught on camera, and I like the idea that he immediately drops any kind of ego for himself and does it to save the girl.
Yeah.
Or at least try to save her. But as far as like the media immediately going, oh, well, he fucked this all up. I mean, yeah, that you're probably right that does seem like a little ridiculous given how many how many kids we see survive because of Batman here. And I honestly can't remember the context for where this goes from here. If that narrative sticks with him, or if they start to talk about it more and they kind of realize, oh no, he actually saved her and everything. I don't know if like Tim Drake maybe gives an interview or something to clear Batman's name. I honestly just can't remember where it goes from here, and that might be, even more of a problem with the story. Again, it is surprising how little of this sticks in your memory. But yeah, I can see that as an argument, though.
Because there's like this theme as well, which it's like when I was reading this, is like I was enjoying. I guess maybe I'll go into like some problems I had with this now. Is I was enjoying all like the stuff with like the gang wars and all the different factions joining in, like the feeling of just like helplessness you get while you're reading this is like Barbara Gordon is like freaking out because she doesn't know what to do, and then everyone's getting snappy with each other because they're all being pulled thin, and it's like it's interesting to see the Bat family like this closely knit, but also this like being pulled apart from every direction. So I like that part. But there is this like running theme throughout some of these issues with like you get with Leslie Tompkins and then the reporter, where it seems to be trying to push like a theme of and especially with, I guess we'll get into like Stephanie Brown's role in this, that superheroes are a bad thing and this is why, because they cause this. And I feel like it's very sloppily handled if that is actually what they're trying to deal with. Because superheroes, yes, you can have like an intelligent argument with them, but when you start using characters like Leslie Tompkins to try and get across this message, and like using Stephanie Brown kind of as a scapegoat to like say, oh, this is why you can't trust like young superheroes, it really feels disingenuous and not really the story to tell that with.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about the Stephanie Brown revelation here. And I think that's probably the direction to go in to really delve into that topic. So, I guess I'll go first. I remember initially really like being blown away by the revelation. Oh my God, Batman had this contingency plan to make all the crime families in Gotham start fighting each other so he could install himself as the head of the Gotham City Underground. That's crazy. And this stupid girl fucked it all up? What the hell? That's my initial reaction to that when I read this years ago. Now, I do see why Stephanie Brown fans were mad and why they didn't like this this direction and kind of putting it all on this character. At the same time, I've still never been a Stephanie Brown fan, and it might have to do with the fact that this is one of my earliest exposures to her. And it might also have to do with the fact that in No Man's Land, she like tells Tim that he's got a bad case of the Stephs, and I just hate her. But like, I can't help but feel some kind of like. It doesn't sound unbelievable. Like, is it really? Would anyone have a different reaction if it were any other character besides Stephanie Brown? If this was Dick Grayson, if this was Tim Drake, if this was Damian, would anyone like? Does that seem any more out of character for any of them?
I think it worked. It could have worked with early Damian, and that's it.
Yeah. Early Damian. I don't think it could have worked with any of the others. I think it works well with Stephanie. Like, I think that. I mean, like, I'm not just a huge Stephanie fan either. But I think that in the context of War Drums, where she is really trying to get back on Batman's good side, I think this idea works fine. And if it had been Tim or Dick, I think it would have felt a lot more inorganic. Like, these are guys that Batman does trust, and they would know better than to try something like this. It's also, on the one hand, it's really weird that Batman even has this plan. And I think they get more into why he has a plan in Act 2 and Act 3, but this is like, I think you and I had talked about this before, Ian, like, you know, we have all these evil Superman stories, and like, I said, like, I'd love to see an evil Batman story someday, like, you know, even an alternate reality. I think this is what convinced me that that's possible, like, where Batman has this plan to become the undisputed crime lord of Gotham City. Like, that to me makes it seem like, yeah, Batman could potentially fall to the dark side. But yeah, I think that I can see if there's someone out there who is a Stephanie Brown fan, how this would rub them the wrong way. But if you have this story where you say, okay, we want to start a gang war and we want it to be someone's fault, then you kind of have to start crossing off characters, and pretty soon Stephanie is the most logical choice to be at fault. since it's Batman's plan, it has to be someone who had access to the Batcave.
Yeah, and
I do find it a little strange that. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if we mentioned this last week, but I think it's weird that Stephanie was somehow able to crack into the Batcave, like with Batman's security, and then is able to crack into the Bat computer without Batman knowing that she did that. Because it's a big plot point here. She still doesn't know any of Batman's secrets. She doesn't know that Catwoman is Selena Kyle. She doesn't know that Bruce Wayne is Batman or that Batman is Matches Malone. But somehow she's able to get into the Bat computer and find his war game scenario and steal it.
Okay,
I
and
thought
like,
that was.
Here's the thing that gets me the most about that. How the fuck does she not know who Batman is if she's able to sneak into the Batcave? Like,
she meets Alfred.
Yeah, and she meets Alfred. Like, okay, maybe you don't know Bruce Wayne's butler. To be fair, I don't know, Jay-Z and Beyonce's butler. Fair. Okay, like, I'm sure he's a prominent butler in the buttle community, but I don't know him. So fair, you don't know him, you don't know Bruce Wayne's butler on site. Okay, but like, the Batcave is underneath Wayne Manor. You don't know the basic geography of the city you're in? Like, I feel like, oh, how weird is it that the Batcave is out here and Wayne Manor is just right on top of it, and Bruce Wayne's just one of those people who has the funding to be Batman. What a strange coincidence. That's the thing that gets me the most, where I'm just like, what? The Matches Malone, not knowing Batman is Matches Malone, I actually like a lot. I like quite a bit. Again, I feel so weird that I'm justifying so much for this story that, like, I like war games quite a bit, but I don't think it's, like, great or anything. It's just an era of Batman comics that I really enjoy. Sometimes in spite of itself. But, like, I can so get over the Bruce Wayne thing because it has absolutely no bearing on the story. The Matches Malone thing I actually find really interesting and kind of believable because Batman is the type to keep secrets from people. Yeah. I'm not even sure that, like, I don't know who knows Batman is Matches Malone. Orpheus obviously doesn't, in the context of war games.
Sure.
And probably Robin's closer than of an ally than Orpheus if Stephanie was going to be Robin, but still, like, I don't know who knows Matches Malone is Batman. I assume maybe Dick Grayson just because they've been, pals for so long. Barbara might not even know. I guarantee Jim Gordon wouldn't know that. I think there's a lot of potential there that, like, that's just one of those secrets he keeps from just about everyone, and, obviously Catwoman knows here, but I could see her figuring it out since she knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. I don't know.
I think I would like this a lot more if Batman was even more of a control freak than what he is. Here, like, he doesn't let Stephanie know anything. He basically just, she knows as little as possible while still being able to be Robin for 3 minutes. I think it would be really cool if Batman was and this would require so much retconning it wouldn't even work, but if Batman was the kind of guy who, like, he recruits, an ally, and then, like, he tells them, hey, my name is, Jeremy Bentham or whatever, like, and, like, takes off his mask and he has, like, another disguise underneath. If he just did that with, like, all of his allies, like, and it sounds silly, but, like, if he compartmentalized, like, everything so that, like, okay, I'm going to tell Dick Grayson some of the stuff, but I'm not going to tell him everything. And basically, like, really going to the extreme of Batman doesn't trust anybody. And then I think I could buy this a whole lot more. But it's just really strange to me that a 15-year-old girl is able to crack the Bat computer and is able to find the war game scenario, but doesn't find out that, like, I feel like if you're already in the Bat computer, she would just be like, well, I'm just going to download all this. And then, like, she would have figured out that Matches Malone, like, she would have found, like, Matches Malone itinerary, go buy matches, and then go talk gangstery to the Penguin or whatever.
To-do list.
Yeah.
Can I before we get too far away from it, I just want to bring this up. I don't have the patience for it, but someone on the internet probably does, and I would salute you and be very happy if you were to do this. I really want a master list of how many people know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. I really want that, like, just a list of all the characters that know Bruce Wayne is Batman, because it is, like, it's such a fucking meme, and it's like a joke in how it should have ended. It's like, hey, I'm Batman. Do you want to know my secret identity? Like, it's so played up as just a joke that he tells everyone. I really want to know, like, how many people in the DC universe know Bruce Wayne is Batman, because it's like, we think of it like the Bat family knows and all this stuff, but like, there have been so many just brief little blip characters that have come into the Batman universe and found out the secret, and it's kind of hilarious. Like, a little before this era, but does anyone remember Bruce Wayne Fugitive?
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite crossovers.
Oh, okay, good. Well, like, that starts off, if I'm remembering correctly, if I'm not thinking of a different story, that starts off with Bruce Wayne having a bodyguard who he's training as, like, another sidekick, who finds out that Bruce Wayne's Batman. Like, it's like just a thing, and that character, I don't think has appeared ever again since that story arc, but it's just, like, it's so silly that, like, this fucking one-off character knows Bruce Wayne's Batman. Like, it's treated as such a big deal in Hush when the Riddler finds out, but, like, God, how does half the Rogues Gallery not know who Bruce Wayne and Batman are?
That character, Sasha Bordeaux, Greg Rucka is absolutely in love with her because he later used her in Checkmate. And then later on, after Bruce Wayne, it might have been sometime during the Bruce Wayne Fugitive story, it's revealed that Bruce, air quotes, accidentally left his suitcase open so that she could see that he was Batman. Like, she could open it and find his Bat costume, because apparently he subconsciously wanted her to know. It's really dumb, because it's like, I guess the justification was, oh, well, Batman's too smart for someone to accidentally stumble on his secret identity, so he had to have done that on purpose. But then that's just really dumb, because why not just tell her? So yeah, that's not a great, I guess not another, like, element of that era of Batman. It's like, that doesn't age well, or that's just really weird.
No, you're totally right. It's just like, please, anyone on the internet listening to this that has the time and patience, please compile a master list of anyone who has ever known Bruce Wayne as Batman. I don't care if they forgot or it got retconned away or whatever. I just want that list. I want to know how many characters it is. Because it's always treated like it's such a big fucking reveal, and it really shouldn't be. It should be the worst kept secret in the DC universe at this point. Like, everyone makes fun of Clark Kent and the fucking glasses. No, Bruce Wayne fucking tells everybody he's Batman. It's ridiculous. All right, what else?
Did you ever watch the Star Kid musical, Holy Musical Batman?
No, I've not had the time yet. I do want to, though.
Oh, okay. There's a funny joke in that where someone says, Batman ordered a pizza. He lives right under Bruce Wayne's house. And they're like, oh, Bruce Wayne is so awesome. He lets Batman live in his basement? It
just reminds me of the Lego Batman movie where it's like, Batman lives in Bruce Wayne's basement. No, Bruce Wayne lives in Batman's attic. Anyway, okay, what else? What else can we talk about with this? Art. Let's talk about the art. I mentioned a little bit earlier, but I do think the art picks up a bit in this one. It's shoddy. It drifts in quality a bit, but like I think it picks up. We get a little bit more of that like Jim Lee heavily inspired stuff. Like I'm just flipping through, looking like really early on in the volume when Batman's talking to Oracle as the gang war is starting to escalate, and he's just like standing in the holographic map of Gotham City. I think that is a great image of Batman and Oracle. Like, that's kind of their whole shtick together. That really, I think that splash panel really does kind of epitomize what their dynamic is for when Barbara was Oracle. No?
Yeah,
yes, no, maybe so?
I think that's a fair point. Just like there's a lot, quite a nice little moments with that, like when Nightwing's first introduced. There's a cool panel of him and Batman running together. There's some nice action shots of Tim Drake when he's trying to like stop things in civilian clothes, which you don't really get to see in the Batman universe. You don't ever see someone fight like a regular clothing in the middle of the day, so that's like a nice like setting which people can really play up. But the whole idea of like trying to sneak through like a school, I do agree. I feel like the art here is picked up, but there's still some dodgy parts here and there. Like I think the Catwoman issue. Little funky with the anatomy sometimes there.
Oh, what? Women in comics are drawn unrealistically. What?
Yeah, I know two separate people who do not, and I guess three now, who do not like Paul Gulassi's artwork. I actually kind of like his art. I can't defend it, but like the eyes look really weird, but I like his art. He's done a couple Batman stories, and I've always kind of liked his artwork.
Okay. I mean, I get what you're saying. I do like, yeah, I guess we do get a lot of close-ups of Catwoman's eyes here for some reason. That is cool. No, I like her eyes. I'll say some of the layout of one of the action scenes in that issue really did confuse me. Because, alright, so there's the panel where Catwoman's chasing the dude down and it's like a car chase. So, like, she's behind him and she gets a missile launcher, and then she pulls up beside him and points the missile launcher, and then she's behind him again and shoots the missile launcher. I'm like, what? That's confusing. That's just strange pacing of action.
I was looking at Paige for a few minutes. I was trying to figure out, like, what is going on? Did he, like, just suddenly push the nitrous button, like, and, like, zoom forward? And
I mean, no lie, this does, again, early 2000s, Fast and the Furious was very popular. Like, you just tell by looking at the cars that they're drawing here.
You know, you mentioned No Man's Land earlier, and I feel like a hypocrite kind of, you know, dissing this story because it really does have a lot in common with No Man's Land. And I'm a huge No Man's Land fan. And it's been a few years since I've read it. So maybe if I reread it, I would feel differently. But I don't know why I can dig No Man's Land so much when it's basically the same thing, except with the added benefit of an earthquake that kind of quarantines the city. Whereas this, you know, I don't know, like, I'm just reading this and just like, man, I can't wait for something different to happen. But with No Man's Land, you get a lot of the same stuff too. Although I think there is more variety in No Man's Land. But
no, I mean, there is. Like, and No Man's Land has, again, a lot of that same, like, just really fucking dark, depressing shit in Batman stories. No Man's Land has, I can't remember what fucking volume it's in, but, like, the whole issue you spend in these people's heads where they're like, they've been trapped in this room for like 2 weeks and they're like, we're running out of food, we're not gonna have enough, and this fat ass is sitting here, he's sick, we're gonna have to eat him, we're just gonna have to do it, it's what we're gonna need to do to survive. And the whole issue, Batman's just trying to get to this room so he can, because he thinks there's people in there, so he's trying to get there so he can help. And then he gets there and it's too late. They've already killed the guy they were planning to eat. But it didn't matter anyway because they already ate someone else beforehand. And it's just like, the shit is just so fucking dark. And you can't get that kind of story in war games, I will freely admit. But I do like that era of storytelling where we weren't afraid to go super dark with Batman. And tell some really, like, fucked up stories that are just, like, that's just a horror story. That's really all that is. And, like, this, you know, the tension of the school shooting and the gang members being in the school with the kids, it is scary. It is freaky. But it's not the same. It doesn't lend itself. The situations here don't lend themselves. Like, we were just talking about the Catwoman issue. Yeah, like, Mr. Freeze kills a bunch of guys who he lured there as, like, oh, peace negotiations, but at the same time, it's not, like, the same kind of, like, dark thing. You just kind of, it doesn't give you as much room to invent situations as No Man's Land did. because that one had like that great Scarecrow story with Huntress, and it gave you a lot more opportunity, I think.
And I feel like that might be. Oh, if you want to go ahead, Ruben, you can say.
No, I was just agreeing with Ian.
I feel like that might be like the main kind of like missed opportunity with this, as yes, this is probably a very well told gang war in terms of just different scenarios and being able to like do the escalation. But is it the best possible gang war you could have told in Gotham? I feel like that's what it's missing. Is we're getting all these like lower tier like gangster-esque villains with like Penguin, Black Mask, and you're getting all the realistic villains with like Mr. Freeze turning up there occasionally. But I feel like this would have been a lot cooler if it was the super villains that all got gathered together, because you think Batman would have gone for them, the big, like if it was Two-Face's gang and Riddler's gang. I know during this time period a lot of those villains were like off limits and doing their own thing. But if this was like involving like the Joker and Two-Face and Scarecrow and all of those villains all at once and their specific gangs and their specific gimmicks, I feel like you'd have a lot more variety in like the mobs and stuff.
Alfie, you should maybe read this this arc by this little known Batman writer named Tom King called The War of Jokes and Riddles.
Gee whiz! I heard him. I heard him on the tweets, and perhaps I can check him out one day.
Yeah. No, like that's kind of the thing is War of Jokes and Riddles. Like a lot of people were upset it wasn't an event, and I actually kind of wish it was. Like, don't let Tom King just tell the story that he told, but do some fucking tie-ins that you don't have to read, but you can read, and you really probably would have had a better War Games. I can't deny it. In spite of itself, I do actually really appreciate that all the Rogues Gallery is not heavily involved here. I do appreciate the more realistic, down-to-earth tone here. Realistic for DC Comics, I should say. But, like, I mean, again, it hits really close to home, the idea of this, a bunch of gang members breaking into a school and holding kids hostage, and you just got the kids running through the school hallways not knowing what to do. Like, you probably couldn't publish this comic today. That would just be... That'd be a little bit beyond the pale. And, for better or worse, I kind of like to be able to look back on this era of storytelling. It's not good because it's dark and edgy. It's just, you don't get this type of story anymore. And that's probably a good thing, but I do kind of miss it sometimes.
I will say... you go ahead, Ruben. I've been talking.
I'm going to echo something I said last week. I think you would really enjoy Batman City of Crime. It came out in between Act 3 and War Crimes. It looks like. I'm looking at my shelf. And it's really dark and depressing. It's pretty much as real world as Batman can get. So I feel like you would really like that. But I don't want to hype it too much just in case you read it and you don't like it. But yeah, that was right around the same time as this was going on.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't know. Like, these kinds of stories you just can't tell anymore, and that's probably a good thing because, like, we got King and Morrison, and then we had just that weird 5-year gap where no Batman comics were published for any reason. I never understood why that happened. Yeah, like we got Morrison and King, and they like kind of took off and did more fantastical things that are definitely much more, I guess, important is like, it's the harsh way to say it, but they are more important to the medium and ultimately to Batman's character. But again, there's something about this era that does just stick with me. It's not the best, it's not great or anything, but I dig it for reasons all my own.
I feel like you do have a place for this though, and I am, because like, as much as I'll enjoy like getting to read a good Superman comic, at the same time I still like reading like Punisher Max or something, and that's like the two most different ends of the spectrum you could possibly get, not just on morality but just on kind of tone and everything. But I feel like the moment fiction starts putting limits on itself to try and like where else are you going to ask like difficult questions than fiction? Like, I feel like you're less. There needs to be less of a stigma in the dark and like the blood and like all the most horrible things of humanity, because once you start to understand it, or at least tolerate yourself to it, I guess this might be sounding very fucked up, but this is just like how I see things, is you kind of start getting rid of the fear and like the media portraying things to try and make you scared of them and being irrational around it. The moment you can look at a horrific action for what it is in the real world, the more you can prepare yourself for it and the more you can try and find solutions for it, to me at least. And that's what I think fiction is for. And like Batman specifically is a character that is meant to deal with like the darker times. He can do both. Like you can have lighter adventures with Batman and you can do dark. You don't have to limit to himself to any one tone. And I feel like there is a place for like the darkest dark Batman stories, as long as it's done with tact, as long as it's done with taste. And I feel like the problem is your average comic book writer, sorry to say, isn't necessarily qualified to deal with that in the way it deserves. It really has to be like the upper echelon to really handle it properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. Comic writers can be great until they're dumb. Again, there's really dumb decisions that get made writing comics sometimes, and what can you do? It's just unfortunate. After
that very thought-provoking monologue that was really good, I've got something nitpicky and fanboyish to say.
Okay.
Why didn't Oracle? Doesn't she have the power to like? I'm going to turn off all these news cameras with my technology powers. Why didn't she do that? Like,
I don't know. Is that actually something she could do?
I don't know. Maybe not. I think Oracle's abilities vary depending on the needs of the story. Like, in real life, no human being could do the technology stuff she does. But, like, I guess if the cameras were connected to the internet, she could. So maybe not. But it does seem like something in any other story she would do something like that. So it does. And I feel like Oracle is kind of treated, like, not treated badly, but she's written in such a way where I dislike her. And I usually like Barbara in the stories I read. But in this, I don't know what's going on between Dick and Barbara. But at one point, Batman is like, all right, kids, I want you two to behave. And they're both like being really snippy with each other. And I'm sure it has something to do with Tarantula, maybe. Or, I know Dick thinks he killed, what's his name? Blockbuster. He thinks he killed Blockbuster, or he actually killed Blockbuster. So maybe that has something to do with it. But she's like really snooty with Batgirl, with Cassandra, like 2 different times in a row. Like at one point she's like, Batgirl even says, "Don't treat me like I'm dumb." And then like immediately after that, Barbara is like, "Seriously, who cares where Stephanie is?" And I was like, Barbara, calm down. Like take a nap or something. Mm-hmm. Eat a Snickers.
See, I think that actually works again to the levels of stress that all the characters are dealing with. I feel like Barbara shows it the most, and I quite like that. It's that weird thing of reading these crossovers that like they've all been collected, but again they were more meant to be read at the time, because like the Nightwing issue we get here, he's got this panel where he's just like got this huge internal monologue of like, I should tell Bruce everything that I've done wrong. I'm fine. And like we don't get much context on what exactly he did wrong. Like if you haven't been reading the Nightwing run, you don't understand what's going on in that scene. You just understand that for the context of this story, Nightwing's conflicted about some shit involving Tarantula, and then Tarantula's like, I killed Blockbuster, and so you piece together that's what it's about, but really it doesn't hold your hand for that one at all.
There's a really funny exchange I remember, and I want to say it's in one of the War Games books, but I may be wrong, but it's in a Robin comic where Tim is back to being Robin, and he sees Blockbuster's corpse. And then he says, my first thought is, hey, this is really good news for Nightwing. My second thought, which should have been my first thought, is, oh no, that's Blockbuster. And I remember thinking that's really hilarious. And I don't remember, I want to say that that's after this because Tim knows about it, but I don't remember what story that was that I read that in.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know shit about Nightwing's like career.
You're not missing much.
Yeah, I mean,
Sadly.
like, he was a cop, and then it's so fucking confusing. One of those characters is like, oh yeah, cool, it's a sidekick that goes off and creates his own identity, and then no one really knows what to do with him from there.
I feel like when he was in Bloodhaven, they knew what to do with him. Once they destroyed Bloodhaven, it was like, oh, we're screwed now. What do we do with him?
I disagree. They just like said, oh, we're taking Nightwing out of Gotham to be in Diet Gotham with none of the cool Gotham stuff. It's just Gotham but worse, and now he's Batman but lamer. Great way to herald this legacy character as old as Bruce himself. Yay!
Oh. I kind of like the early Nightwing stuff.
Fair enough. I know it's popular. I'm
You just
a
like
contrarian
his
asshole.
disco collar, Ruben.
I just like Nightwing's butt. I mean, you know, I'm
Like
only
all-
human.
Yeah, Ruben. If I were to say commission a cosplay costume maker to create an exact one-to-one replica of Nightwing's original disco collar costume, perfectly molded to fit your body, how much money would I have to spend to get you to just do like a series of videos reviewing all of the Nightwing solo stuff wearing said costume?
That'd be great.
I'll make you that for free, man.
Here we go. We got this going. We're gonna get this going. Everyone, leave your comments that you want Ruben's Nightwing review series, and he will wear the disco collar. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about with war games? I mentioned the art for a little bit, but we didn't get too much into it. Did anyone else have anything else with the art they wanted to talk about? Anything that stood out, good or bad?
You know, we talked in War Drums about how it went from like super hyper realistic to like really cartoony for a stretch of a few issues. I think this overall is more consistent. I know there's more artists at work here, but I think overall it's more tonally, it's all more or less the same kind of artwork. There is one issue that feels a little bit more cartoony, but I think it's more or less similar art from issue to issue, which I think works better in a crossover.
Again, the Robin issues are the biggest jump, but it just maybe it's the tonal and I'm pretty sure it's the same artist that was doing the Stephanie Brown Robin issues that I really hated. Maybe it's just tonally it works a lot better. It doesn't stand out as much. It's definitely where the story gets its best when the Robin issues start up. But yeah, it gets pretty it gets a lot more consistent. One of the scenes I didn't mention is I really like the mob meeting scene that happens in that Robin issue. A lot of good happens in that single issue. Like with the mobs meeting, they're talking about how all their families are being targeted, and this one low-level guy just kind of seizes control because he's worried about his daughter. I really like how that, and it's just 2 pages. That's really effective. And again, like that page I talked about right at the beginning where Tim Drake's giving CPR, I'm fucking looking under blood on the floor, and it's really, really shocking and troublesome. It works really well. The art in here I feel is a lot more consistent. There's still some like hiccups and stuff. I mentioned the guy who fucked up Cassandra Cain's mask, which is like a crime against nature. Cassandra Cain's still got the best Batgirl costume.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down. God, I miss this. It fucking Orphan's such a cheap clone of what greatness this costume was. I really like the sequence where Cassandra Cain sneaks around all the police officers. I think that was really, really well done and looks really cool. whole blending in with the shadows thing. I don't know how much sense it makes, but it looks really cool.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm just like, if she wasn't putting in this much effort to hide from the publicity because of Bruce, she probably could have got into school a lot faster.
I mean, maybe you're definitely probably right on that front. I guess my counter argument is, if they went into the school as fast as they could, there was a chance that they could have been spotted, not just by... okay. You know what? I'm going to say it works better that they avoided the publicity for this reason. They explicitly say, Nightwing explicitly says, that part of the reason it got as bad as it did for this school was because the media started reporting on it, which caused more gangs to flock to the situation. So if they weren't dodging the media, there's a chance that the gangs inside could have found out that Batman was on the scene and coming in there.
Fair enough.
That could have put people in more danger. I will make an argument for the thing. I think the context of the story justifies that decision.
I can't argue with that one, at least, so fair enough.
Okay. Well, alright, let's go ahead and move on to ratings then. Ruben, I suppose I'm most curious about you. You're the naysayer here, so where are you rating this one?
Well, I think us talking about it has kind of made me enjoy it a little bit more, especially the last chunk of it. I'm going to say 3 shape-shifting vans out of 5.
Funny note, I don't know if you could do it so seamlessly and like change the lettering on it and stuff, but you can get car paint that like I don't know how it works, but you can like get car paint in a smart device and you can tell your car to change colors. It's kind of cool. Anyway, so it's one of those Batman gadgets that seems like so comic booky and kooky and weird, and then it's like an actual thing that ends up existing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, Alfie, how about you?
Yeah, so for this one, I really enjoyed like the pacing of it most of all. I think it really got the sense of scale, and as an opening act, I think it did this job a lot better than what the prologue did. Just like it feels more cohesive, it feels more like this is the beginning of a story, but still being entertaining on its own right as a read. So I'm gonna give it 3.5 Cassandra Cain overly drawn lips through her mask.
It's like really distracting, right?
They're just like popping out of that, and I'm just can she breathe?
It's like he just drew her face, and they're like, no, she has a full face mask on. And he's like, oh, we'll just color it black.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Anyway, yeah, for me, I'll go a bit higher. I can't remember what I rated War Drums, but I'll go pretty high on this one and give it a 4 out of 5. Shape-shifting vans was a really good one, Ruben. I'll give it 4 out of 5. News reporters that seem morally conflicted about the nature of vigilantism.
There we go.
I don't know if he's a good thing. I just don't know.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, next time we'll be going on and talking about Batman War Games Act 2. So see you there, folks. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Comics Kid 2099.
And I'm a geek for fun.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we once again talked for like an hour on this and didn't get into where it's going too much, so this is surprising. All right. Peace.